Hello and welcome everyone to the new episode of the Awakened Entrepreneur Revolution podcast with Jana Nixa and myself, Judith Junke. Today, we want to invite you to take a zoom out. We want you to step back one or two steps and to change your perspective with regards to how you look at what you do in your business, where that fits in if we really look maybe at a global scale at what this new earth and the new world and the new way of doing things, what that actually means, where we might be at the moment. Jenna and I will be sharing perspectives, how we look at the world or specific sectors in the world at the moment. And then we'll invite you to take that reflection and take some inspiration and impulses also to ask yourself then, oh, was that new perspective? What does it mean about me, my truth? And then how can you maybe bring that back also into your business and in the way that you operate, that you sell, that you market, maybe even what you offer, right? So let's get curious, let's get excited, and let's all open our minds a little bit more and see what more perspectives there are to explore today. Hello, Jana. I love doing this with you today. I'm really excited to start.
Yes, let's dig in. What a topic, right? So many changes. Just something I wanted to share as we dive into this. A few years ago, when things were starting to get a lot more heated, we'll say, COVID and all of these things, there was a part of me that was like, well, if everything's going to change, should I even start a business right now? Right? It was like, where are we going to even I don't even, are we going to even have an internet? And so like navigating these times of change, and because where would I be had I not just continued? And so, there was an intuitive voice that just said, just play with what you know now, like where you are now, and just build as if right now, today, and not, where are we going 6 months from now or whatever. There's just so much uncertainty, and it adds an added layer to what we do as business owners, because yes, there's uncertainty in the market always. There's uncertainty with, different investments in real estate and all that. But there's legit uncertainty now about what business is even going to look like, And so, but I wanted to share that with you because we still want to take action where we are today, and not like what may or may not happen in the future, because we don't know. When we're talking about this ascension and this movement from more of that 3D matrix, we can see that it's starting to crumble, and we know we're moving into like that Christ consciousness, right? Like the heart, that 5D existence. But depending on who you talk to, Judith, like some people are like, we're halfway through. And other people are like, this is going to take like thousands of years. And so, I wanted to bring those two like different perspectives into it. Because if you're anything like me, like that was kind of where my logical mind went. Like, am I sure I even want to go through all of this or go down this road, knowing that, we may not even recognize who we are in the next 10 years. But that could very well not be the case. And so making sure that we work with what we have now is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I love that as an opening point as well, to keep that always in mind. We have agency, so we're always able to make choices, right? No matter what is going on in the outer context. So maybe that as an opening invitation for you. And maybe I start with some questions for you when you're listening, so you can just see where those questions take you. If you look at the world right now, just see whatever comes up for you, right? It doesn't matter whenever you have read any sort of news. Probably you don't listen or watch any of that a lot or at all anyways, but just when you tune in now in what does the world feel to you at the moment, what comes to mind for you? Maybe something, recently I've seen a lot on my feeds and where I'm looking at stuff coming up around education. I'm seeing a lot of parents debating homeschooling versus the school system. One huge sector. Obviously, we can look at global crises about war, about whatever it is. There's a ton of them, right? Then you could look at financial systems, but you could also look at, like, just if you tune into feeling into the earth, feeling into the world, what is the vibration that you're getting at the moment? Just overall, if you try to connect and just observe, what is it that is coming up for you now? What do you see, even maybe? Depends on how you are receiving the easiest way. Is there a sensation, a feeling? Is there a word coming up, a color? Whatever it is, just take a second maybe and tune into what it is when you really step back and take that observer perspective in this bigger scale, the global scale. What does the world feel to you at the moment? What is coming through? How is it presenting itself to you in your own very unique perspective from exactly that point where you are standing right now in this moment while you're listening, knowing you can shift and change anytime, and to just be aware and notice what is coming through for you. And that will be different for everyone and anyone listening. And then understanding, oh, okay, what is it that is presenting itself to me? And I want to share a few examples on how I am perceiving certain dynamics, because that is my first invitation to all of you listening. Whatever it is that you see once in a while, or whenever you tap into some piece of information that is coming to you somewhere, some news, some social media, somebody talking about a topic, right? Because there is certain dynamics I feel that are taking place in the world at the moment. And to me, it makes absolute sense to distance a little bit from it and to observe what is the dynamic of what is being displayed through the thing that is happening. And even if that is a war situation, even if that is political things, I know in the US this year is election time again. It's always a big deal, even around the world. Then we really have a lot going on in the financial system. You know, whatever it is that you see, there is a lot of dynamics going on. And for the sake of not getting caught into the topic of the, you know, the micromanagement within the news itself or the situation itself, where we can very easily be drawn into the discussion of who is right or wrong, what is just or what is injustice, you know, what is fair, what should be the better way or what is the worst way. And to avoid this sort of a dynamic, because this is never what it is about. This is what is potentially it wants you to be drawn into, so you get sucked in. And I'm inviting you now, and that's why we're doing this episode, in really zooming out to look at these things and pick one that may be triggering you, where you feel, oh, if ever I get attached to something or drawn into something, I can now notice it is always around the education. It is always around something to do with finances. It is always to do with something on the humanity end, which might be a war situation or crisis somewhere where people are hurt, or, you know, where there's injustice and people are not treated in a fair way. That can also be the women, or, you know, whatever that is. And take that area that is showing up for you most, identify that. Take a second and see which area that is, where you can see, oh, this is potentially the one where I'm getting involved in one way or the other. And then I'll share in a second, but I'll leave in Jana, because I see in her face she's got something to say. I'll put some of my perspectives on this. But first of all, I wanted to invite you to check in with yourselves and find that area or that topic where you can identify, oh, if we talk that direction now, I'm feeling something. There is something going on. And bear with us, stay curious, and I'll hand it over to Jana for the moment, looking into her face with curiosity to understand what she's going to say.
Well, you know, I'm just making some notes here because, oh my gosh, there's so many different things coming up around this topic and just sort of how I navigate it. And so I'll maybe just give you my take on how I personally navigate this. So there's so many different things. So let's start with as within, so without. And this is a principle, I think it's from Hermeticism, but it doesn't really matter. But what it's offering is, as we do our own inner work, as we become more familiar, so many things, right? The unveiling is happening, right? Which means we're seeing things that we didn't know were existing in our world, right? A lot of the shadow work of the earth. And I can't help but notice as I do more shadow work and unveil things within me, it then so happens to see and reflect on the outside as well, and so it's this huge like unveiling and realization on the inside as it is on the outside. And so I think that's even what the word apocalypse means, is it's not like the end. It actually means the unveiling, like the realization, like the truth. And so, in order to see some of these things, it's not necessarily going to be easy. So that was one thing that came to mind. And then, the next thing that I like to do with these things is I love what Judith's saying, like pay attention to what pulls you, because, that means there's an energetic match inside you of something, right? However, I have friends and, there's several different ways that this spirituality manifest in the spiritual community. And one is love and light, love and light. That is it, the end. And then other is getting very much in the shadow work, the shadow work, and the shadow work, and the shadow work. And, and that almost gives way to more polarity, right? Like seeing the stuff in the outside world, really getting polarized by it. And what I'd like to bring in to this is, I like to know about it and keep it on the periphery so that it's there and I pay attention to, okay, well, I can see that from that higher. I don't have that that emotional charge around that. Like I'm able to see this at that higher vantage point and why it is happening the way it is. But not just stick my head in the mud. Like I think some spiritual, teachers sort of are teaching and just, it's all love and light, because there is things that are going on and there is things that are coming up, and we're noticing things about our world that I never, if somebody told me 5 years ago or 10 years ago, like this is going on, I would have been like, you're freaking crazy. I've said that many times on here. My former self saw myself now. They'd be like, well, Janice lost it clearly. Like she's just, because I have opened my mind to so much more of what's going on. And so that's sort of the way I've been on both sides of those coins. So I'm not saying like one's right or one's wrong, but I've been in the just send love, send light. And then I've also been heavy in the trenches on, oh my God, this rabbit hole, that, oh my God, darkness, the darkness in me, the darkness, and so it inevitably will change again. But for me now, where I've really found that home, for lack of a better word, in all of this is knowing about it, focusing more on myself, seeing it more in the periphery, and focusing more on, what's going on inside of me. Because the more I unveil within me, the more my outside reality reflects that. And so hopefully this is making sense to somebody else besides me, but that is just the way I see it. And then last thing I will say is there are a lot of teachers that talk about two worlds, two actually distinct worlds that are splitting. And so that is also another way we can see this. Now, does that mean physically, like, brings a lot of like, what about my parents and my sister and my children? Like, how does this all work? And it's not necessary. I think it's two worlds, maybe in a state of mind, perhaps more so than it is like, bye, mom, it's nice knowing you. But essentially, the more the people that choose that higher frequency of, I'm going to do my part, I'm going to continue to pay attention and to cultivate awareness and to understand, what's inside of me and have compassion for what's going on outside of me, will be in a different sort of way of existing versus those who remain asleep. And so I think we've experienced it during COVID, like two very different worlds with the vaccine, two very different worlds. And it just continues to get more and more polarized. And, so to kind of bring it back full circle to what Judith was saying, while it can be polarizing, it doesn't have to be. And that doesn't mean you're just spiritual bypassing and saying love and light, but we can know about it and do our best to be aware of it, but not let it consume. Because then that can also, that's also a pendulum. In other words, like another emotional sticking point that people can get lost in. And so it really is very much a very individual process of how to really navigate this. And it's equal parts for me can be scary because it's like you really are on your own with this, in the most beautiful and most scary way. Because everybody's got their different journey that they're going to take.
Truth. Thank you for bringing that in. I love that. And I want to elaborate a bit on what I've just opened up a few minutes before to bring in some perspectives. And one thing that I'm really observing with curiosity and where I'm allowing myself to check in once in a while beyond the information level and the learning level, which I'm passionate about also, but this is not the perspective for now, is financial development, I'd say, of the financial sector overall. I'm not going to dive deep into this one thing or this one option, but overall, give you one example. I don't know if you guys been following this, but there is a new thing that has just been launched in the markets, which is quite interesting. It's going to change the way that the financial sector is going to evolve in this year. And people are looking now at this with curiosity, which is that for the first time ever, there are ETFs out. Maybe you know this financial product, right? It's like a bundle of different stocks. But what is new now, ETFs have been there for a while, but what is new now is the first, I think it's 10, maybe now even more, ETFs have been launched and by governments and regulatory systems been approved that include Bitcoin. So it's the first time ever that we have cryptocurrency in a classic financial product, if you want. And this is causing movements, I'd say, in both markets. So you have the classic stock exchange that is connected, and you have the whole crypto sector that is in there. But the only currency at the moment which is in there is Bitcoin. But the question now is what is the effect longer term, right? And where's that going? So my intention with this now is not to go into predictions about where the markets are going. But if you observe this, this is one sector where you can see, oh, this is one event happening in this particular sector where you have emerging of a new field that also has had a lot of criticism because of volatility and all of that and crypto space stuff. And you have the old tradition field, if you want, of the stock exchange that's been there forever, that is regulated, that is in a way representative a lot of the control system, the hierarchical system. And it's now merging with the new decentralized one that is more supposed to create an environment and an economy that is, well, decentralized per system, but also to create more availability without the hierarchy, right? And now you have a first product, if you want, that is a marriage between both of these. So if you want to observe these kinds of things, you can now ask the question, which one is pulling which one and moving which one? So where is the dynamic, if we want to look at dynamics in this one, right? And if this is already triggering you because it's about money, it might be about potential losses, potential wins, insecurity, volatility, safety, whatever it is that you connect with this whole broad area, right? Investing, having secure, like retirement, pension, whatever it is, for the future, that is all connected as a construct to this whole financial thing, I'd say, to allow the perspective to understand and see what is the dynamic and what is your truth in that. Is it rather, just even when you're listening to this now, you don't have to be an expert in the details, but just listening. Is it pulling? Does it feel to you more like the decentralized, the new, which is more open, the whole world that is behind that on the blockchain and all of that is behind is the new system, if you want, where another new world is also built on? Is that the pulling side? that is kind of integrating the old in a way that makes it a new version of it, so it's evolution in that way? Or is the dynamic coming from the other side? So the traditional kind of old system is trying to suck in part of the new in order to control. And that is just one example of dynamics in the world, is how to look at it and see where you feel this, because there is no general right or wrong to this thing, but it is the way in how we as humans act in all of these things, because in the end, it is us who create the systems, even though we look at now outside this old metrics, outside whatever there is, and we're going to be building and creating the new. There will be some sort of a system. There will be some sort of a structure. Will it look different? Yes. Just with reference to how is it going to be is how we are creating it. And the creation in the new world, as it is less and less just through the logic mind, but how we create also on the vision level, on the frequency level, the choices and intentions we make. And it's now where we could potentially drop into the quantum field, where you focus on this is what is becoming the reality in matter. But the idea of that is the same if you look at all of these things that we already have on the planet, and to bring over the evolution into the new. It is your choice where you want to focus on and how, and what is your intention of what do you make this mean for you. This is your power that you have in shaping and creating all of these areas without having to be the super expert in whatever, right? That is a different level. That is, you need knowledge and skill set if you really want to get involved and do all that stuff. But with regards to the other dimensions that are becoming more and more relevant right now, this is a great example on how you could choose potentially, if it feels aligned, to say, oh, that feels really exciting to me to see as it from the pulling side of the new, in that example, the decentralized system, and having the potentiality in that and say, oh, if I'm intending to make this a great thing where it is just an evolution, also taking what is great and functioning from the old and building it in and putting it through evolution into something greater that is serving, is a great way to look at things, right? And finding your truth in that. It's like, oh, how does it resonate with me? That is one example. I have one other example I wanted to give in here for you. A completely different area, right? But just to understand how you can look at dynamics. And that is, it's a controversial topic, right? And that is the wars in the world, right? There's so many areas where there is war, and this is not new. So if you then look at all of the Middle Eastern region, I'm just going to group that because there's several things, right? And knowing in the world there's more wars. This is a highly controversial topic, even if you go beyond the political positions that one could take in this. But also, if you feel into this, I know this is a trigger topic for so many people, because what does it bring up? A lot of injustice, a lot of powerlessness or power overruling, right? A lot of control, and everything around, I can show up the way I want and I can understand I am powerful, but it does not have an effect. So this is the element of the powerlessness, right? This is what triggers a lot of people about these situations. And to understand also here, to go away from this, okay, what is right, what is wrong, who is investing here, who is delivering weapons, who is, doing whatever in the parties, in the positions of the negotiations and all of that. And looking at the people, the population, and all the suffering that is also caused. And again, step away from that and look at what kind of a transformation, what kind of a dynamics do we have here as well. And this is a challenging topic to our minds, right? Because it involves people and actual life and suffering. So on top of that, what if the perspective on all of these conflictual areas could also be that one side could mean, because of the higher frequencies that we have now, this is an extrapolated version of the version that each one of us will have individually, where the higher frequencies and vibrations shine light and more light on the dark. And this is, if you look at the planetary, the global level, these are the areas where there is so much dark that needs to come to the surface, even though it includes and involves all that it has, right? Because a war is never pretty, right? But what if that could also be a perspective of the transformation that is happening, that in a way has to happen for the evolution to come to a different level, right? That could be one version to look at this. And this is not a version or a perspective for us to bypass any discomfort that we perceive ourselves, right? If you perceive discomfort in any of that, whether that is rage coming up or whether that is injustice coming up for you, deal with it. Look at it. That is for you. That is for you to discover for yourself, for your own truth. But overall, looking at this, that could be a perspective. There's multiple other ones. But also it could, and that is another perspective that we could have, and that brings me again to this choices that we have. Where do we put the intention, even on these really large scale things that are happening that we can't personally influence directly, but indirectly through our choice and intention? The other perspective here could be potentially, what if this is the darkness taken over because within all the parties involved and the stakeholders in here, there's a theory that is also being discussed and spread, if you want. If that is their invading path, if you want, and this is selling the new, but in a disguised way, and through destruction, if you want, right? The pathway you could potentially see there is, oh, but we have to destroy heavily this, and we need the dark in there, looking through the polarity of light and dark, and we have to have that. But within that, who can we trust? And that brings in the next layer of it, right? This is the trust game in these conflicts, because it feels impossible potentially to us to understand who can we trust in the game, who is really the true light that we are all seeking. Is it in there at all, or is that something in disguise that is trying to pretend to be something and we can't really know, and that causes insecurity? What if we can choose to not let this be the perspective that we have, or even if you want to go down this and explore for yourself, to allow this and see where it triggers you, because that is the only thing that you can do, right? I know this is a complex topic, and I know we could take this, even beyond. It becomes less and less tangible. But I wanted to really, on purpose, open up two of these areas. And you can do that with any other area, if that's health, if that's education, if that's whatever it is triggering you. Play around with that from an observer perspective and see what perspectives can you choose with intention in order to support creating the new way and the new earth, even with these big things that you can't personally directly influence. And I hand it over to Jana, and then I have one thing to close this off to say, to bring it back to here now and more tangible things.
Well, I don't know what to say. When it comes to all of these things, and it's not that I don't want to get into these topics. It's not about that so much as it is, to me, I feel like it's the collective shadow. And, it's just part of, as we continue down this journey, certain things are going to escalate. And, we can either see this as the birthing of the new or the destruction of the old, or you can see it as both, because it really is at the same time. And so, that's why I love what that teacher said, that I'll just reiterate, is know that it's happening. Pay attention to how it pulls you one way or another, because there might be some, that electrical charge there. But ultimately, what we have to do is be in charge of our own shadow in this game, and our own consciousness level, and, how we choose to do our own work. Because just that, anybody that's listening to that and understands what I mean by that, I think sometimes because we're on this journey, we forget how powerful and how incredible being willing to do that is, because we just do it. But there's a lot of people that don't even know what it is, much less aren't doing it. But the more we can hold that light, find that compassion, pay attention, and cultivate that awareness around, what sort of wants us to polarize, and find out why that is, that is our part, right? Yes, some of us, it may be more. Some of us, it may be going and getting involved in one way or another. But for a lot of us light workers, it really is about, doing our own and holding our own light through this. But not from like that airy fairy land, but from that observing land. And so, the more we do that, the more we get to choose. We get to choose. So, is everything coming down and crashing down, or is it being rebuilt? And so I think that's where those two worlds come in. And I have to be very aware when I consume certain content, because it could be that pendulum or that energy stream that pulls me in a different direction than maybe my highest good, and so really what I'm trying to say ultimately is any of these topics are thrown around in our face and begging for our attention is, having that awareness to be able to sort of see that higher perspective in it all, and where it's going and where it's headed. And if you're anything like me, just being as patient as possible, because we really don't know how long this is going to take or where we're going to be. But what you focus on, you create. So if you're continuing to do that work, if you're continuing to, heal, and the way I see it is the more the darkness comes to light, the more light we can hold. And so the more we do those sorts of things for ourselves, the more we are leaning into and focusing on a new way, this 5D earth, this 5D way. And so that's sort of my take on it when it comes to all of these different things is, how much investing, because to me, over all of it, and this is not being insensitive to anything or any suffering, but at the end of the day, the fight is for our attention, and so the more we can keep it on like that, what am I trying to say? Like on the vision that we want versus the vision that we don't want, the more we get to create what we want. And so that's all I'm going to say about it.
Yeah, and I love that because it perfectly and beautifully leads into what I wanted to close off with, to really bring it back to more tangible now, because we've really zoomed out. I really zoomed out here on these things. Overall, the invitation from my end is, even though you are in your business, you are the CEO of your business, and that is obviously, the goal you have is to grow that and to figure out how you run it your way, which is amazing. At the same time, the invitation is really to, on a regular basis, maybe that's once a week for you, or, however you want to do that, really stop and pause for a second and take this perspective and the step back and connect to a few things, how you view the world. That does not necessarily mean watch the news or whatever, but whatever topic there is, maybe just something randomly popped up on your phone, and that was just the direction that you needed to pause a second and stop thinking about lead generation, about marketing, about sales calls, about your Facebook group, and leave that for a second, but go back to, because this is the core that makes you different as a light leader from somebody who is an older school, if you want to stereotype a little bit, entrepreneur, somebody that runs a brick and mortar business somewhere, right, and is just producing the result of a just well-running business, which is nothing wrong with, right? But being in this light leader position and being part of an active creation of the new world and of the new way of how we do things, we have to sometimes take this observation perspective and allow to see what is going on and how do I choose to respond to these things. Also, what does it inspire me to, maybe connected then to your purpose. I see this in this dynamic. just in the last few short sentences, if we dig into this school thing and the education part, if you observe, there is discussions more coming up about homeschooling and new ways of delivering learning to kids. And you see that. I mean, I see that a lot. I don't even have kids, but I'm observing this, right? And I'm like, oh, interesting. There's obviously some movement going on. Like, okay, cool. What am I getting from that? Oh, old school systems are operating obviously at the moment with a lot of more control or kind of things. And then, oh, but that pushes also in a positive way the coming more to the surface into the light of the new. Wow. And what does it lead? Like me personally, it leads to, oh my goodness, this is so good, because more kids will have the opportunity to learn in a way that is more natural to them. Oh, amazing. So if I look to future, in 10 years, in 20 years, in 25, 30 years, these people, these kids will be grown ups. I'm like, amazing. We'll have more than ever, right? More kids than ever who will be grown ups then, that have learned to learn in a way that is natural. And I'm like, oh, cool. What does it inspire me to? And this is what my invitation is, to allow to look at these bigger topics without getting sucked in and without the urge to react in a way. You don't then have to sign the next petition. You don't have to, I don't know, be an activist on whatever. Go if you want to, but this is not the purpose of these whole things. It is giving you also information and clarity for your own path. And that is my invitation to you, to allow to zoom out and to learn and practice to observe the dynamics beyond the triggers that you receive yourself for your own personal development and evolution. Hope that makes sense, and I hope you enjoyed zooming out here a little bit. And I would close this episode now, unless Jana wants to add something.
Thank you for listening.
So let us know what you think. Let us know if it inspired you, to what it inspired you. Share it with somebody you feel needs to hear this as well. If you love this, leave us a review, and we'll see and hear you next week.
Bye for now.